Good morning, Cattle Market News. Shaylee Stewart here with your Cattle Market News tip sheet for the week. I took a little bit of a hiatus. I had our Big Country Genetics bull sale to get through. My son popped his first tooth. I had a couple work trips to go on, and then we all got sick in our household. So nevertheless, I took a little hiatus. I took a little time to be present with my family, and nevertheless, I'm here with you again, ready to bring you these weekly reports. Excited to be back with you all. And I know it's important. So many of you are on the brink of being done with calving. You're thinking about what the summer is going to be. Some of you made it through the snowstorm of last week and all the chaos and stress that added, and now you're wondering, what are these markets going to give me come the later half of 2022? So with that being said, if you want to understand when the most opportunistic time is to market your cattle, you have to be diligent in knowing what's going on in the market in a week by week basis. So let's dive into this report. Let's talk about these prices. That way you can find the point in which yields the highest profitability for your operation. So let's get you caught up. Let's talk about the futures market for last week. So this is the previous Friday's close to last Thursday's close, because on last Friday, obviously the markets weren't open. April live cattle throughout last week's market gained $2.85 throughout the week. June live cattle gained $2.60. April feeder cattle gained $1.65, and May feeder cattle gained $2.40. So that was a really strong week, especially considering that it was a holiday, and thankfully it was indeed, because that momentum on the board really pushed and helped feedlots acquire the higher prices in which they received. So in the Southern Plains, live cattle traded anywhere from $1.38 to $1.40, mostly at $1.39, and that is considered $1 stronger compared to the previous week. The market's real excitement, though, came in when the Northern Plains traded cattle anywhere from $2.24 to $2.31, which is but mostly at $2.25 to $2.26, and that, my friends, was considered $2 to $3 stronger. So the exciting piece of that is show lists were current, feedlots knew the market and the opportunity in which the market currently possessed, and packers needed cattle. So prices shot $2 to $3 stronger. It was absolutely great for the marketplace, and this week we're already seeing cash cattle trade higher in the Southern Plains, and we expect that the Northern Plains will follow suit. So that's really exciting, and thankfully those regional packers came in. They just had to gobble up the cattle that was accessible to them, which obviously pushed prices higher, and thankfully we're hopefully we're going to see that again this week, and until realistically the middle of May, when those calf-fed fats are going to be available to the marketplace. So hopefully until then we continue to see the futures market and the cash cattle market work hand in hand and just drive prices stronger and higher, as beef demand is at exuberant levels. And so hopefully we'll see this cash cattle market gain some momentum until we see the market begin to become saturated with those calf-fed fats, like I said, at some point in May. So we have a thin window, a thin opportunity in order to see this cash cattle market get higher before it obviously gets lower this summer. So let's root and let's holler and let's cheer for those cash cattle markets and those feedlots that are really advocating for those prices, because it matters. Let's talk about some of the specifics of last week. Oh, before I do that, we also need to talk about volumes. Not only does it matter with the cash cattle market on prices, but also volumes. So last week's total volume of negotiated cash cattle sales totaled 97,066 head. Of that, 73% were committed for the nearby delivery, and 27% were committed for the deferred delivery. Now jumping into the specifics of last week, last week's estimated slaughter came in at 634,000 head, which is very impressive considering that it was a holiday week. That's only 37,000 head lower than the previous week and only 7,000 head less than a year ago. Now talking about boxed beef prices, last week choice cuts averaged $227.48. That was up $1.99 compared to the previous week, and select cuts averaged $259.80, down $1.64 compared to the previous week. Last week's movement of cuts, grinds, and trim totaled 525 loads. Carcass weights for the week ending April 2nd, 2022 averaged 909 pounds, down 1 pound from the previous week, and heifers averaged 842 pounds, steady with the previous report. Now jumping into your fresh beef imports. Imports of fresh beef last week totaled 23,547 metric tons, with again your largest importers of fresh beef being Mexico, Canada, and Brazil. Exports last week totaled 17,200 metric tons, with your biggest buyers being South Korea, Japan, and Canada. Now we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk about your feeder cattle market. Obviously, last week we had a snowstorm. We had a holiday, and so your sales of feeder cattle were thin last week, with only 193,200 head going through auction markets last week. I'm going to break it down to you by region just because we had thin volume, so I'm not going to break it down by state. So starting off in the north central region, that is Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa, your 6 to 700 pound steers, and these are all steer prices, your 6 to 700 pound steers averaged $1.77. That's about $4 cheaper than the previous week, but about $6 higher than a year ago. Your 7 to 800 pound steers averaged $1.63. That's $2 softer than the previous week. And your 8 to 900 pound steers averaged $1.55, which was steady with the previous week. In the South Central region, that is New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri. Your 500 to 600 pound steers averaged $1.86. That is $4 cheaper than the previous week. Your 6 to 700 pound steers averaged $1.71. That is steady with the week before. And your 7 to 800 pound steers averaged $1.58, and that is too steady with the previous week. And last but certainly not least, in your southeastern region, that is Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and North and South Carolina. Your 4 to 500 pound steers averaged $1.80. That is $1 softer than the previous week. Your 500 to 600 pound steers averaged $1.70. That's $2 cheaper than the previous week. And your 6 to 700 pound steers averaged $1.57, which is steady with the previous week. And now I'm going to give you a little bit of homework to do ahead of next week. And this is really crucial, really important, because you're obviously listening to this report because you have some interest in the cattle market. I don't know if it's because you're a cow-calf operator, you're a feedlot, you're an order biter, what have you, or maybe you're just somebody who likes watching beef prices because you're a consumer. So nevertheless, next week is a big legislative week for the cattle market. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives will have hearings for the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. And that matters because we have an industry that is being absolutely depressed and minimized to its absolute core, into a point in which some question whether or not there will be a market in the years to come, because it's not vibrant and it's not sought after from the individuals that trade cattle on a weekly basis. And so I have some homework for you. I know that sometimes legislative cattle pieces can be hard to understand, but it's important to understand because whether or not you're actively involved in organization groups or not, you are involved in the cattle market, and that's how you get paid. And so your prices, your profits are directly tied to the cattle market. So you better start caring about the legislative pieces that affect it. And so from now until next week, I have one assignment for you. I don't want you to worry about prices. I don't want you to worry about trade and what goes on there. I'll get it reported for you next week. Corporate Wall reports it for you, and Mackenzie Johnson reports it for you. Tune into our reports. By next week, I want you to have read The Meat Racket by Christopher Leonard. You can buy the book or you can read it on Audible. And then I want you to take the lessons in which come from The Meat Racket, and I want you to think about the cattle market and how it's being suppressed right now, and how it is realistically on the fringes of being to the same demise of that of the chicken and pork industry. And I want you to think about what that would mean for you and I as small independent producers, and what our livelihood, what our outcome would be, and what our heritage and legacy would end up looking like. And so, like I said, your one assignment before next week, before the Senate and before the House have discussions on the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, is to read The Meat Racket. It's a good read. It's a tough read, but it's a sobering read. And so, like I said, I will put in the comments of this video what the book looks like. That way you know what kind of cover to seek after. But it is by Christopher Leonard, and like I said, it's called The Meat Racket. It is worth your time. It'll open your eyes, and I hope that encourages you to engage yourself in the legislation that's being presented before the cattle market. So, nevertheless, I hope that you dive into those hearings. Both the Senate and the House will have them viewing options for them next week. So nevertheless, folks, get your homework done. We'll chat next week. Shaylee Stewart here with your Cattle Market News Tip Sheet.